And ladies and gentlemen, and I thought, wow, I'd like to be that bloke one day. What better than a ringside seat and all the action right there in front of you? Radio was my true love. There was a bomb scare at Clifford Gardens. He let go a turkey in the studio. She said to me, get another job or get another family. We did everything. We begged, borrowed. We didn't steal. I had vision and I believed in what I was doing. You got to have dreams and you've got to believe. And if you believe in something and you see it through, step by step, it will happen. My dad always said to me, you're never going to get anything in life unless you work for it. Like, I ended up in hospital. I didn't know where I was.
Hello everyone, my name's Graham Strang and I hope my younger self is listening. Today's guest is someone who's had an incredible journey across multiple industries: sport, media, business, community leadership. Peter Rookas is a name that many in Toowoomba will know well, from his early days as a Toowoomba Mountaineers basketballer to a legendary boxing ring announcer. His voice has echoed through stadiums and across Airwaves for decades. Beyond media and sport, Peter took on one of his biggest challenges: building the Toowoomba Hospital Foundation from the ground up, turning it into a powerhouse for the healthcare fundraising for the region. He's also balanced the many demands of a busy career with family life, faced personal setbacks and rebuilt along the way. We'll talk about all of that, the lessons he's learned the hard way and the impact he's made in Toowoomba and beyond. Peter, welcome to the Hard Way podcast.
Thanks, Graham. It's a pleasure, and I'm about to be put under the spotlight the hard way.
No, that's my plan. So, do you want to get right into it?
Yep.
All right. Boxing, announcing, and handing over a baton. This is where we're going to start.
Okay.
You fell into boxing announcing almost by accident, but it turned into a 20-year journey with some of the biggest names in the sport. What was the moment that you realised that this is actually something I'm really good at?
Well, when I was in radio, I started in radio in 1971 with 4GR, and part-time, full-time, but basically doing a lot of sports. But one of the loves that I had was boxing, not to actually go and box, but when I was a kid, we were in a pretty rough area living in Sydney, and a fellow within that community there took all the kids, got them all together and took them to a gym and taught them how to box. And it was a lesson in life, so to speak. But what he also did was he used to pile us into his bongo van, so to speak, about 8 kids, and we'd all go into the Hordern Pavilion in Sydney and see some of the biggest names in boxing. And I'm talking Johnny Famechon, Lionel Rose, Tony Mundine when he was fighting, so many, the Iceman, Trevor Thornbury, these fellows. And I was in awe of the stadium and the way that it was presented. And if you can recall old-style boxing, you were in a smoke-filled stadium of men, basically the light shining on the ring, and the microphone would come out of the ceiling and drop down, and the announcer would get on. And if he dressed up in a suit and bow tie and the whole lot, and ladies and gentlemen, and I thought, wow, I'd like to be that bloke one day. And basically that stayed with me. And then one day Brendan Smith, who is now a renowned boxing trainer and manager and has trained and managed world champions, came to me in his early days of fight promotion with amateur boxing and said, would you like to come and be the ring announcer? It was mainly because I suppose I had that voice, I had that sporty voice. And I said, yeah, I'll have a crack at that, because I was never afraid not to have a go at something. You know, if people said to me, you can't do that, I say, you just watch me. And I said to Brendan, yeah, I'll give it a crack. And of course I got into the ring announcing, and things flowed to the point that it became a passion. And that's, I guess, is the way that I started out.
It is amazing how you've come from it's just, you see so many sporting kids and even kids in any career, all of a sudden it's that one little moment of like, I want to do that.
Yes.
It was just the microphone coming down. And how old were you reckon?
Oh, I was 12.
12 years old?
12
you going,
years old.
wow.
Yeah, you got to have dreams, and I thought, well, if I can do this, and I was doing it here in Toowoomba, and then one Queensland's biggest promoters, Angelo Di Carlo from Ace Boxing, came up, and he saw us do the show, and it was a pretty important fight night. Michael Casitas fighting for a Queensland title. Of course, Michael was local here in Toowoomba and rose to world champion, and Angelo liked what I did, and he came up to me, asked Brendan if he could talk to me, and Brendan introduced me to Angelo. He said, would you come to Brisbane and do some of my shows? And I just went like this, which is the normal thing to do, and he said, no problems. And we developed it's 30-year friendship now, but a 20-year business arrangement where I went and did Angelo's shows. I never expected anything in advance, and I always knew that he would pay me for my services. And I travelled up and down that highway so many times for some of the biggest fight nights that Brisbane has ever hosted. And it was something that I just loved. What better than a ringside seat and all the action right there in front of you, and you're part of it?
Do you have a favourite?
Oh, God, when you look at all the fights that I did...
It can be local, can be Brisbane.
Yeah, I know. And look, I did some terrific fights in Brisbane. I did Queensland titles, Australian titles, Oceania titles. Never did a world title, but I introduced some of the biggest names in boxing. Tim Tszyu, for instance, his first fight was in a professional fight where Jeff Fennick brought him up from Sydney, and I introduced Tim Tszyu into the ring for his debut as a professional boxer. And I hold that as a highlight. But the one fight that really sticks in my mind out of all those great fights was here locally. Michael Casitas fought for Australian title against a South Australian fellow who held the title, and it was the best fight, and to be ringside, and just the fury and the force of some of the punches, and just the closeness of it, and then for Michael to win the Australian Championship, euphoria. It'll forever stand in my mind. One other one was Michael, if you remember, the boxing fans remember, he's a Greek, Casitas is Greek, and he had the helmet with the hair on top, like the big mohawk on top. And when we first bought Michael out, it was part of the promotion. This is the part about boxing that I love, is the flamboyance of it, the music when they're coming in and some of the antics that they get up to coming into the ring. And this night, at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre, boom, the spotlight was right on Michael. And everything went dark, and it just went boom onto Michael. And he was standing there with his back to everybody, and then turned around with this helmet on, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was the most amazing introduction that I've ever done.
It's stuff you wish you could replicate.
Yeah, it is.
It's even harder to do now with the improvements in technology.
The best part is it's memories. Those memories are vivid in my mind. I'd hate to ever lose that, because I can recall some of the best moments and some of the great moments throughout my career, and particularly in boxing, they stick with you.
Oh, look, it's like, I haven't had those sort of memories and things, but, it was like Jamie Lee scoring her first 100 and me waking up to the messages and just that feeling, and then the video of her actually hitting the 100.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wasn't there in person to
I can imagine that, a proud parent and with their child doing something exceptional in sport. And I just, boxing is a real blue-collar sport. You meet some of the roughest and toughest people in the world, but some of the most genuine and lovely people and well-mannered people, and it has like a bad reputation, if you like to say, or because of head injuries and things like this, and because of the the nature of it, the fury, even brutal. But once it's done and dusted, they're a tight-knit community. They're just wonderful people.
Oh, look, we had a lot to do with Brendan, especially in the early years of helping with them all. And you know, I love what he's built and what he's been able to do, even with the loss in it. You know, it just...
and he's had his trials and tribulations. I would suggest that he would be somebody that you would talk to on the hard way. Because let me tell you, he's done it the hard way. And when you lose a son, and you're sitting in your son's corner and he's boxing, and then it was a terrible thing that happened to Braden, but it's one of those things. It could have happened to anybody and it could have happened anywhere. But he had an aneurysm, he hit the deck, and they just couldn't do anything for him. Yeah. And that was something, to lose a child is something that, I don't know, any parent would, it would test them mentally, physically, and look at Brendan, how he's continued with the people around him. And that's what I say about the people of boxing. It's one big family, and how he's continued and then went on and produced world champions and built his business. For him to be probably one of the best trainers and have one of the best gyms, a proper boxing gym in Australia.
Oh, absolutely. Full hats off to him as well. You didn't know what was going to happen. He's built that. He's kept the memory as well of his son as well, which I think is amazing.
And look, the coming up next weekend is the Memorial Fight Night. And we've done a number of them. I think this is number 18 for Braden. And there will be a terrific card, and it will be in memory of Braden, and it'll be a fabulous night.
Well, I reckon if you're a boxing fan, it'd be a very good thing to get along to.
Absolutely.
I've been to a couple of them. I just think what he does is magnificent. So with boxing covered, we now get on to radio.
Oh, okay.
So you mentioned 4GR, 1971.
Yep.
And you did it for 45 years?
Yeah, look, 1971 I went to 4GR and I was first on air. I was doing a coverage of basketball. They liked what I did and they got me onto their football program, and we used to do around the ground scores. Yeah. And there was a main caller, and that was Ian Knight, and he's off-sider, in those days Abby Weemers. And then there were three of us at other grounds bringing in the scores from those grounds. And they'd go around the grounds, and that's how I got my start in rugby league, so to speak. But yeah, look, radio was my true love. It really was. It was something that I enjoyed, and I didn't stop. I was on air from 1971 to 2016, and I finally decided, when I went on holidays and I'd retired, and I said to Graham Healy, get somebody to come in for me, and it was one of the young guys from Win Television, and do the sport, do a wrap-up of local sport, and I'll just fade into the background. No hoopla, no see you later, big, I just faded out. And that's basically how I wanted it, and that's how I did it.
And Graham and I are very good at trading cricket conversations, something controversial happening.
Yep.
So you called in the 70s.
Yep.
You called in the 80s, 90s, and in 2000s.
Yep.
How do you feel radio developed and changed over those decades?
It's completely different. Today's radio is, it's fabricated, it's packaged, it's there's no personality as such. The only way they make themselves personality is like the Kyles and the Jackie O's and some of these other fellas. They've got to make it controversial, and they've got to make it, really hit the nerve of the public. But in saying that, all the music, everything's pre-packaged. It's not flowing. It's not. I don't like it. I really don't.
It's a funny one. You look at, I think in Toowoomba, for me, radio broke a bit when Hamish gave up the gig.
Yeah, that was the last of personality radio. When you go back to Hamish and Lizzie, Graham's always been on 4GR. Graham Healy has always been a terrific personality. And then he followed that from radio, he went into politics and so forth. But he came back to radio. And it's something you could always come back to. But radio in the country is completely different to radio in the city. And to me, you'll never replicate the days of the 70s and the 80s because it was the best music.
Yep.
By far.
But there was so much less content around as well. So everyone was tuned into the radio. I grew up on the sheep and cattle places and shearing sheds.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you were listening to anything else but John Laws, you had to be very careful.
Well, Lawsy was controversial, but he was a personality, you know. It's just like Ray Hadley.
Yeah.
Some of the big names in radio from those days. But you were recognised within your local community. You did outside broadcasts. You actually went out and let the people of the community touch, feel what radio was about. And the best thing was it was live communication. If something happened, you could switch that microphone and you could say, there's a robbery happening now at the Wilsonton NAB branch. Please keep a lookout. The fellow's on a push bike, and I'm just recalling one incident. And he would be in the different area, the different streets of Wilsonton, and we got him. Because of radio and people listening, they saw, but now you can't break into a program. The program has been packaged and it's people talking. It sounds live, but those people are probably doing another job, and they've done that in the space of a half an hour. They've done a 2-hour shift because it's a simple matter of pushing buttons.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you lay it out and put it in, the music plays on cue.
Yep.
So it's not real radio, you know. It's not. Some of the best times I had as a news editor at 4GR was the fact that if somebody one day this fella got away going between the watch house and the court and took off, and he was running. He had handcuffs on the whole lot, and he was running, and he's running right towards me, sitting in the studio looking out the window. And I was able to turn on the microphone and say, and the police were listening, but he was in this area, in the general area of Frogs Hollow. They picked him up. Yeah, that doesn't happen today, you know. If there was a bomb scare at Clifford Gardens, and of course, immediately I said, I'm going out. And I went into Clifford Gardens, and my boss berated me. He said, "You fool, there could have been a bomb in there." But I went in and people were pouring out, and I was doing a report on air to the guy from my phone, to the guy on air, talking about the situation at Clifford Gardens, and there's possibly a bomb in the place. And get out of there. But that was the immediacy of radio, and I'll never forget. I recall this instance that I came in to see a businessman. Could have been you, right? And I come in and say, how about doing some advertising on local radio? Oh, it doesn't work. I said, really? I said, can I borrow your phone? And the guy said, yeah, that's no problem. So I picked up the phone and I kept my finger on the actual connection, did the number and said, hello, Graham, it's Peter here. I'm just down at so-and-so. Listen, we're giving away 5 shirts for every customer that comes through the door in the next 10 minutes. I'll get a free shirt and 50% discount. This guy said, get off the phone, get off the phone. I said, well, don't tell me radio doesn't work. And I got him on as a very, very good advertiser.
Isn't that interesting? Like, you've just done a whole little marketing thing there and it's how you reverse it back at someone saying, if you tell me it doesn't work, why are you panicking about it?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of stuff that I talk to people around these things.
Radio, all you had was the message, right? So you had a recorded message, boom, it's gone in 30 seconds. Newspaper, they can say, oh, look at this, it looks great, and, you know, we'll put this here and that there, and then television could come in and do a dummy ad or whatever and say, well, we can shoot it from here and we can shoot it from there and all. But all we had to sell was fresh air, and it was the hardest gig I've ever done, is selling radio advertising. But I tell you what, it gave me the skills for sales, and it goes with you throughout life. But if you can sell radio advertising, you can sell anything.
So going on from all these wonderful little stories you've just said about bomb scares, about men in handcuffs. If you had to pick your single greatest moment on air and then your funniest moment, what are they?
The single greatest moment on air, there's so many. Like I say, I really got a buzz out of some of the immediate things that when a bank was being robbed at that time, and we're getting information from the scanner, which we're not supposed to have, but I used to listen to all the police conversation. They knew we had it, but you didn't really supposed to have it. And I think moments like those where you could make something happen by flicking that switch, and that was when the guy broke away, the bank robbery. The funniest moment, Mark Phillipson's a terrible prankster, and he came in one morning, it was Graham Healy's birthday, the 18th of August. I'll never forget Healy's birthday. And he let go a turkey in the studio. And Healy was there trying to continue without any interference, so to speak, his morning program, and here's this turkey sitting on top of the console looking at Healy, and I've never laughed so much in my life, and recall that particular instance of live radio and what's happening in the it was just hilarious, you know. It's just
Wow, I'm sending this podcast.
look, there's a dozen, there's more. There could be 20 or 30. If I really, so we had carpet snakes come in, and so many different things that happen that are fun, and just make it. People really reacted to that sort of thing and loved that, and talked about it for ages, because Ely had a turkey in the studio.
So we've covered radio, covered boxing. Now, well, I wouldn't say it's a secret, but you as a basketballer.
Okay.
Because you're not much taller than me. But I do have it on good authority you went from key cutting to playing basketball.
Yeah.
How the heck did that happen?
Well, when I first came to Toowoomba, I was only 17 years old. I didn't have any job prospects as such. I didn't know what I was going to do. Really, and I just fell into walking in to Piggott's, which was a big department store in the 70s here in Toowoomba, and there was a guy key cutting and engraving, and I got to talking to him, a fellow called Joe Gazonis, and he said, I need an assistant. I need somebody to come in and cut keys and that sort of thing. And I said, well, if you show me what to do, I said, I'll do it. And basically I started off cutting keys and learning how to engrave. And one of the managers, particularly of the menswear department, was a fellow called Barry Raftery, who became my mentor, one of my best friends, my coach, and a guy that I looked up to for years and years and years. And Barry approached me because I was probably 6 foot and looked a bit athletic, and said, you don't happen to play basketball? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I said, I played at high school, and I played in a lesser competition in the western suburbs in Parramatta. And I said, let's come to Toowoomba. He said, how would you like to come to training with the Piggott's All-Stars? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So I turned up at training, and I met these guys, and I started running around and playing. And eventually, I signed up for the B grade side, and I had a couple of seasons in B grade. And, of course, Barry was the coach of the Mountaineers at that stage. And the Mountaineers, basically he was the state coach, Queensland coach. And we had a number of players from Toowoomba that represented Queensland in the day, back in 68, 69, 70, 71. And Barry said to me, you know, if you put your head down and work hard, you'll get an opportunity to play A grade. And I had a couple of seasons in B grade, played against some real hard-nosed fellas, the Bosun brothers, the Smith brothers, a number of others. And they toughened me up, if you like. But I found it hard to break into the A grade because they'd won 6 premierships in a row, 6 seasons in a row, and but I eventually did, and I was part of the next 5. We won 11 premierships straight, Pickett's All-Stars. We were the St George of basketball, if you like. The great St George side in rugby league won 11 premierships in a row. Back in the 50s.
It's amazing because I'm assuming everyone was sick of playing you by the end of
it. Yeah. And anyway, once I made the A grade side, I'm playing alongside all these state players, and they virtually lifted me. And I learnt so much from playing alongside these fellas that eventually I put my hand up and I wanted to be part of the Toowoomba Mountaineers, and I did become a mountaineer, and they were some of the best days of my life because we were the best side in Queensland. We toured around Queensland and played. People wanted to come and watch us. We toured around northern New South Wales, and we had so much success, and we brought big teams to Toowoomba and filled the stadium down at the old Water Street Indoor Bowls Hall with 1,000 or 1,200 people capacity, and some of the best basketball that you'd see from the day. But obviously, basketball's pretty intense, and I moved on after basketball, but it was a great time.
Do you have a particular lesson that you got from basketball that you used going forward?
I think it was about discipline. It was a big thing. I was pretty wild. And a bit rough. And obviously I'm no good to the team sitting on the bench, fouled out of the game. So I guess the one big thing was the discipline. But if Barry was here, he's passed away, unfortunately. he'd tell you that I wasn't the gentlest or calmest player that he had in his squad.
So you're saying playing basketball now, you'd probably foul out quite a lot?
No, I love it now because what was taboo then is allowed now. More body contact, great stuff. The things that should have been done in the first place back then was that, if it wasn't intentional, but it was contact. But in those days, they called everything.
Yep.
But today, if you watch the game, it's a very, very physical game. NBL and NBA, and I love following the NBA. Those guys are amazing, and the athletes. But it's a different game.
Do you get sucked into the debate about who's the greatest basketballer of all time?
Oh God. They call LeBron James, but Kobe Bryant was, and then of course Michael Jordan, and then you go on. You can throw them in. Larry Bird from Boston, throw them all in. They've all got their attributes and so forth, but I'd say Jordan would have to be the greatest.
I actually watched they asked him in the late 90s, is he the greatest basketballer of all time? And he said, that question's not fair. I might be the greatest basketballer of my time.
Yeah.
But there's no way you can judge us all against each other. He said, it makes a good conversation. Yeah,
pretty humble guy. Came from a very basic background, and he's risen to, he's the GOAT. Yep. Where Tiger Woods is called the GOAT in golf, I'd still argue for Jack Nicklaus, but I mean, Woods of his time, he was unbelievable.
That's another debate there.
There's
brilliant in that.
Heaps of them. But no, I think everybody aspired to be like Michael Jordan when they were playing basketball.
It's a fascinating debate that we could probably do a whole other podcast on. So we've got through basketball and those other parts of your life. Now we're going to go on to something that was probably one of your biggest challenges, the Toowoomba Hospital Foundation.
It was.
Now, one of the bits of information I got from you it says, and I quote, "You were given a piece of paper and a pen and told to start a foundation from nothing. 6 months in, you find out they only had enough money to pay you for 6 months. what went through your mind, and how did you actually get the job?
You're pretty close. Exactly. I was given a pen and a piece of paper, and you're the Toowoomba Hospital Foundation. I didn't have a card. I didn't have a letterhead. I didn't have an office. I didn't have anything. I've been thrown into this job mainly at the behest of my wife, because I'd left radio and I decided that the way to go was in sports management, and I became the CEO and manager of the Toowoomba Rugby League. I did that for 12 months. Best state of origin tickets, all the pizzazz around rugby league, but it was 70 hours a week, very poor money. I had a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage, and I had to do something about it. So she said to me, get another job or get another family. And I said, but it'll be cheaper to get another job. I said, but you find it for me. So she went looking, and she came up with this job. It was a new position at the Toowoomba Hospital, CEO of the Toowoomba Hospital Foundation, all these attributes that she said I had. And of course,
you had them?
Well, yeah, to a degree I could agree with her, but I didn't want to work at a hospital. Who wants to work at a hospital? I mean, the hospital's the last place you want to go to. I'd never been to hospital. But anyway, I humoured her. And it said, you have to have computer skills. I said, I've got no computer skills. She said, you'll learn. So I humoured her and went for the interview and sat down with the board, members from the hospital and members from the foundation, and they said, there's this new position and this is what we want to do. And they asked me how would I do it, and I told them, you do this, this and this and this. And I wasn't expecting to get the job. So I was just humouring my wife to go along for a job interview. Anyway, they called me back and they offered me the job, and I said, whoa, hang on a minute. This changes everything now that you're offering me the job. What is it? And so on. And I had to go. I said, no. I said, I'm going to go home and talk to my family. I said, what you're saying is you've got enough to pay me for 12 months, but you want me to sign a 3-year contract. I don't have a motor vehicle. You don't have a motor vehicle in the package. I need a motor vehicle. And I went home and talked to my family, and they said, do you believe in what they're trying to do? And I said, yeah, they're trying to help the community and trying to raise funds to buy equipment for the needs of the community within the hospital. I said, that resonates with me. That sounds great. But I'm a bit worried about this, short term, 12 months, sign a 3-year contract. And they said, well, you can always go back to radio. But one other thing that I did in my life, I actually sold electrical. And that goes back to the early 80s with a group called Chandler's. And within the space of 18 months, I became the top 30 in Queensland as a salesperson for Chandler's in electrical. So I still had some skills up my sleeve if this job didn't work out. But I was determined for it to work out. Well, like you said, 3 months after I was in the job, I found out they had enough money to pay me for 6 months. So I thought, God, what are we going to do?
Well, I do know that I'm going to fix my notes next time.
I've got to make this work. So I started. And look, we did everything. We begged, borrowed. We didn't steal. I bent the rules of Queensland Health in doing things. And we survived through those early days. But I knew that we had to have cash flow to be successful. So
it makes you pretty sure you drag money out of it.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think you asked me.
Well, I could see opportunities within the hospital. They didn't have vending machines in the hospital. I thought, God. So I got on a motor Coca-Cola and said, John, I need 20 vending machines. God, where am I going to get them from? Just get them. And we got these vending machines in and put them in various locations throughout the hospital. And all of a sudden we were starting to make money, coming through the vending machines. And that was just a start. And I eyed off the coffee shop cafeteria, which was only a little basic cafeteria then. I managed to get the management rights for the cafeteria. At that time, they were also talking about building car parks, and I said, I want the car park for the foundation. And they were going to let it out to private enterprise. And I said, no, we'll take it. We'll run the car park. I had no idea how to run a bloody car park, and nor did I know how to run a cafeteria, but I had a good idea, and I had some confidence, if you like. So anyway, we ended up getting the car park in the coffee shop cafeteria and that income, and all of a sudden we went from an organisation that was probably bringing in $100,000 to $200,000 a year, covering wages, being able to donate to the hospital, to having $1 million in income from car parking in the coffee shop cafeteria.
And vending machines.
In the meantime as well, I was running, because I'm a golfer, I was running charity days, golf, to raise money for the hospital. I had 16 on the go in 12 months, and bringing in $100,000 clear in donations to the hospital. I had one of my board directors say, you're playing more golf than I am. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll step away from this position. I'll run your golf days for you, but I'll take half of the profit. And the chairman told the board director to shut up and let me continue to do my job. That was just one instance. But we did many things, dinners, breakfasts, all those sort of things, and all of a sudden it started happening. But at the start, it was a huge challenge, and I did it with very little staff. I only had my PA and a young girl that was 16. She's still with the foundation today, 40-odd years. And we started, and we kept going, and we pushed and pushed hard, and we made it work. And now it's one of the most successful charities, not only in Toowoomba, it'd be the leading charity by far, but it would be one of the best charities per capita in Queensland, without a shadow of a doubt.
Look, we've had a lot to do with it, with you and with Alison. It's been, and I know that's one thing I love about her. She reminded me of you at times, because she's as blunt as she is.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it, because it's about literally when I said about you rang me or Dad and just went, I need $500 for this, or I need 10 vouchers, or Alison does a little bit the same. It's
By saying that, it sounds easy. All I have to do is ask and I get. It's not that easy.
No,
and what I had to do was I had to take the client or the possible donor and put myself in their position and say, rightio, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? A warm, fuzzy feeling? There's got to be more in it for my business. Well, we promote your business to the hospital, one of the biggest employers in Toowoomba. You become associated with the leading charity. You are helping the community, and there are so many other benefits where we can expose your advertising and promotional material, and we can bring people in through that door for you as a business operator. And that's how I did it. I always put myself in the seat of the person I was going to talk to, the business or the donor or whatever. But particularly, I had to build a network of supporters for the foundation. And I had nothing when I started. No business card, no stationery, no nothing, no promotion, no whatever. I went to my friends that I worked for and did things for over the years. And I went to Cranbrook Press and I said to Maury, I've got no money, but I need business cards and letterhead, envelopes, da-da-da-da-da. And Maury said, I'll set you up. And he did for nothing. Boom. Cranbrook Press got all the printing for the foundation for the next 23 years that I was a CEO. I went to Russ Wilson. I said, I haven't got any money, but I want ads on the radio. I went to Gary Wazinski at Win Television. I said, I haven't got any money, but I want ads on the TV to promote this foundation.
So one of the things that Jody Coddy and I talked about in my second episode was the importance of not only networking, but the relationships inside.
Absolutely.
And you've hit a lot of that on the head.
Absolutely.
You went to your relationships and said, I need help. But if you hadn't had the strength and the friendships in those relationships, you wouldn't have been able to do it, would you?
No. you build friendships, you build relationships. I always said about sales, and in radio, it worked in radio and in electrical as well, is that you develop a relationship, and you build trust. And then what you do is you turn around and say, well, I want you to have this, but I need this. But all those people that I went to that helped us out for nothing, they all are. That's where we spend our money at the Hospital Foundation on radio with 4GR. That's, well, now Triple M, Win Television. Like all these people became, they were recompensated, if you like, with our business once we got rolling. But I had vision, and I believed in what I was doing, and that's why they bought my vision. They could see what I was trying to do with the foundation.
And it's one of the lessons I try and teach even people who are younger than me, going, you can't do it alone.
Oh no.
Yeah, if you tried to do all that alone, you would have failed. Do you agree?
You'll hit the wall.
Yeah, well,
which I did. We'll talk about that as well. But it was something that happened. But if you believe in something and you work out a plan and then you go through it step by step, you'll be successful. That's what I was only 10 or 11. Dad was a driver in the Air Force, and he brought home a wing commander, an officer, and I was in awe. And we sat down and talked, and Graham said to me, you got to have dreams, and you've got to believe. And if you believe in something and you see it through step by step, it will happen. You will be successful. I always remembered that. It's just one of those little things where an impressionable child or young person has found something that gives them a direction with whatever they do. Yeah. And he said, you can apply this to anything. He said, it's the same as you going about a job, any job, and the building blocks for that to be successful. You've got to believe, and you've got to do anything to make it happen. And now let me tell you, I did some things that probably did bend the rules very hard with Queensland Health, but I made sure that foundation was going to be a success.
That's amazing, mate. And then look at where they are now.
Well, they've done very well. Like I say, I was there 23 years. In that time, I did have a couple of breakdowns where I hit the wall, and that was just doing too much. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, that's not all about Peter. And you can put too much pressure on yourself, and you can bring yourself down. And then you got to do a rebuild, and that's the hard part after all that, because it can happen. It happened to me twice. I didn't learn from the first time, and that was bad. I'm so proud of what the foundation has done as a group, as a board, and as a leader in Alison Kennedy and the staff that she has, that it's just gone to the next level. Yeah. When I left there, $11 million in donations had been transacted, plus staff development, research. I'd garnered the support of a number of people in the community, but it needed someone to come in and pick up on the ball and run with it. And I said to Alison when I handed over, say, my position as the CEO, I said, here's the ball, and I had an imaginary ball. I said, you stuff it up and I'll come and kick your backside. And I looked at her and she knew I was serious. And she has, and has done a tremendous job. And I've been retired 9 years, which has been fantastic. Every day's Tuesday. And people look at me and say, what do you mean every day's Tuesday? There's Monday. No, you didn't listen to me. Every day is Tuesday. You choose what you want to do. And basically that's what I've done. But I can tell you from retiring, There's not one day that I sit there and say, what am I going to do today? There's always something to do.
And if you don't have something to do, I'm assuming Kathy's got something.
People told me you'll be busier when you're retired than when you're at work, and it's almost true. And I still do a bit in the community, but not as much. But it's more about me. It's more about my family, about some of the things that I probably missed because of the amount of work that I did going along.
If you're from around here, chances are you've worn something that we've embroidered, printed, pressed, or branded. Whatever it is, we just get it done. So if you need something, drop in and see us. So speaking of that, we've covered all these amazing things you've done, your lessons, your sport, career, work. But as you and I talked when we're putting this together, this is some of the uncomfortable stuff and your challenges.
Yep.
So the busy life, marriage, kids, divorce. But walk us through some of those tough periods in your life. And
well, it's probably, I hit rock bottom, probably in my early 30s, where I'd taken a leap of faith and got out of the public service and felt that I could do something in the community. I took on a community newspaper, and I sold the advertising in it, and I built the newspaper to a level where it was 44 to 48 pages, but it was rugby league, and that's with my love and passion and so forth. So I had this rugby league week type thing, if you'd like, and you remember the days of rugby league week. We had one here in Toowoomba, but in the end, printing costs escalated, advertising dried up a little bit, but it became all too difficult. So I sold it to the printing company. I remained as the editor, but I was getting paid, but I really didn't have any direction of where I was going. I was still doing part-time radio, part-time television and other things, but I'd hit rock bottom. And basically my marriage was falling apart. I had 2 boys. It just wasn't meant to be. It was probably too young. And, getting married at 20, 21 and having kids and all look rosy, but there's a lot of things to go with it. Marriage is probably the hardest of anything that you'll ever do. Working at a relationship, 2 people, and then you have your children, and you've got to do the right thing and the best thing for them. And at that time, we were arguing a lot and whatever, and it was an ugly part of my life, and I had to move on. So virtually, I left home, left the house to my ex-wife and the kids, and I remained seeing the kids every second week and providing monetary support, financial support for them for school and other things, but it was a tough time. I wasn't really settled. And this is when a mate of mine said to me, come and work for me. And I said, electrical, Chandler's? I said, yeah, I know the difference between a toaster and a fridge. I said, the fridge is the big one. And he said, I'll put you under my wing and then I'll let you loose. And I said, well, how, selling? And he said, well, you sold me advertising in your paper, so you must be able to sell, you have selling skills. So I got stuck into it, and I watched Ken, and he was my manager, and watched what he did, and I replicated what he did in terms of the reps that would come in with the different products, and we'd have all these products in the store. And I used to get them to come back when they'd finish their day of rounds, and I'd buy a 6-pack and we'd sit down and have a couple of drinks. And I said, tell me why your product's the best product and why should I sell it? And I did that with a lot of them. And I built that from being somebody who knew the difference between a toaster and a fridge to being in the top 30 salesmen in Queensland for the Chandler operation. And it was a huge operation like Harvey Norman back in the day. I guess then you have to balance your life. And probably one of the best things that ever happened to me was that I met Kathy, my current and forever wife, 37 years married, and we got 2 beautiful children. And I moved on. But we started from nothing. Kath, her father has set up and bought her a hairdressing business in Toowoomba. Kathy's Clever Cut. I was working for Chandler's and getting reasonable money, but getting good commission if I really worked hard at it. So we decided that we'd live off Kathy's wage from the hairdressing, and then that we save everything that I made. And I had other streams of income or jobs. I had 4 different jobs at one time. So trying to do all that and balance a marriage where you've got 2 kids from another marriage that turn up every second weekend. And Kathy was amazing because I still wanted my game of golf, and she would look after the kids. But trying to balance it all out, we were a team. And I make her stay at home and be with the kids, and she wanted to work after selling the hairdressing salon. And I said, well, when Kerrod, my youngest, goes to school, I said, then you can start looking for work, but I will be the provider. So I worked these different jobs and worked all hours, and we made it work. We stayed at home. We didn't go out. It was a luxury to have a meal out once a month, or even go out once a month. And you've got to make these sacrifices when you're younger, because it's going to be, we could see the bigger picture down the track.
Yep.
But no, and a relationship, the hardest thing in the world you'll ever work at. And it's got to be give and take. There's got to be understanding. There'll be arguments and all those sort of things, but in the end, if you truly, truly love one another, it'll work out for the best. And now we're reaping the benefits of all those hard times.
Relationships is just tricky, especially when, like you're talking about here, you're working 4 jobs.
Yeah.
You must have had some tired points there where even making it to turn the alarm clock off to get dressed to go to work,
Yeah.
that's
look,
when
it
the
was 7 days a week. But, my dad always said to me, you're never going to get anything in life unless you work for it. And I learnt that from an early age because he was a blue-collar worker. We didn't have much money. He couldn't afford to pay me for a bike. So I got a paper run, a job as a kid, 12-year-old in Sydney. 4 o'clock in the morning, Mum would wake me up. I'd go and do my paper run in the morning, and then I'd have one in the afternoon because I wanted to double what I could do, but I still had to study and do all the things. I probably wasn't the best scholar, but I could work.
Yeah.
And you know what? I had the best bike in school because I bought it. And that's how young people today are given so much. And that's why I say, no, you've got to work for it. I could have given my kids a lot of things, but I said, no, you've got to work for it. These are the steps that you have to take to build, to get into, and build a life. And they were made work from when they were 16 years old. One was a checkout, Bianca was a checkout girl at Coles, and I used to take her and go and pick her up. And Kerrod would work for Joe Ramier, and he'd be doing the shows, and he'd be doing the food concessions and so forth. And I'd make sure that they were working and had an income.
And also teaching them how to work.
Oh, well, the other thing was you've got to have work ethics.
Yep.
You've got to have loyalty. You've got to make sure that you turn up on time, that you're clean and dressed tidily, and you do put in the work, and then you have time to rest.
So in all of that, how did you go about setting the boundaries on even the people around you to make sure you could do on all this? Because, one thing Teal and I've struggled with a lot is that there's always a lot happening around you, and it's so easy just to say yes, 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 yes. Next thing you know, it's Thursday and you haven't really even given your wife a high five, let alone given her a hug.
Yeah, well, I mean, those were some of the things that I made sure that we always did was to have that see you later, an embrace, a peck on the cheek or whatever. We knew what we had to do. Cass was the same, and she's always been the same, but she's worked hard and she continues to work hard even though I'm retired. And that's a big thing.
Keeping you in the manner that you...
Yeah, well, keeping me in money for bowls and a game of golf here and there and that sort of thing. But, and balancing that all out, and then balancing friendships and having those friendships, and being able to socialise and getting around. You get to a stage where everything comes over the top of you.
And you talk about that here. You've been through 2 nervous breakdowns.
Yeah, they call them clinical depression. And you had to have medication and those sort of things. And let me tell you, they were tough. But I brought it upon myself. And this is the thing that where you can get individuals who, I'm not very good at delegation. I never was. And the girls, my staff used to tell me and keep at me about delegation. And it's an important thing. It's about balancing that out. But I couldn't see that. And I kept on packing things on top. And then all of a sudden, kaboom, Peter hits the wall.
So when did you have your first rock bottom?
Probably about 7 or 8 years into the foundation, because I took it personally, and people said to me, you take this as like your own business. You're being employed to do a job by a board, but you take it like, and it was, I had to do that to make it mine, so to speak, and make sure that all the things that I wanted to see work out, do that. But one person is only capable of so much. And that was the lesson that I had to learn, was that you can't keep doing it. And it was a big, like, I ended up in hospital. I didn't know where I was, and whatever. And of course, I came out of it, and I was quite, okay, things are going to be different, but they didn't. And I didn't learn. But let me tell you, I learned the second time, because the second time scared hell out of me. And it could have cost me my family. It could have cost me my marriage. And you've got to learn to prioritise. You've got to learn all these things that happen. But you're not mental, but it is a mental problem. I mean, you have to take medication. I understand that. And because depression is a real thing, and people don't understand, and men are the worst because they don't talk about things. At least women get together, have a cup of coffee and work out the worries of the world and their own worries and so forth, and they seem to be able to cope and manage better. And this is why more women are coming through as leaders, and I'm all for it. I reckon they're, some of the people in the positions, in companies and business and whatever, because they're very capable. Men have got to learn to discuss their issues and problems with other men.
Yep.
And sit down, and you've also got to learn to know when somebody's not okay. And you've got to sit down with them and say, are you okay? Is there something that we can talk about? What's going on in your life? Do you have any problems? And these are things that men don't discuss much.
And it's hard because a lot of men, if you ask them that, they'll go, no, I'm fine. You've got to know your mate well enough to go the next step to go, mate.
Hang on a minute. I know when you're all right. You're not right, and you got to open up and you got to tell me, and let's see if we can work through this together. So that's what I always say. My door's always open to my mates, anybody that's struggling or any setbacks, because I've been there. I've done that. I know what the signs are, and I know now from experience what's happened. But people have got to get over this, people in general, to understand about depression. Depression is real, and I was part of starting up It's a Bloke Thing Foundation, and that was a lot about mental health. There's also about prostate cancer, and guys not going and getting their prostate checked. And I would go and talk to men in different settings in my job at the hospital about, having this prostate check. And blokes would say, big tough like, I'm not letting any bloke put his finger up my bum and that sort of thing. I said, you don't have to. You can have it done by blood test. But I said, go and do it because it is the most common of cancers.
Yep.
And it's bigger, much bigger than breast cancer. And breast cancer gets all the promotion and whatever. And I don't begrudge anything that happens with health and promoting and getting support. So therefore, I'm all for anything to do with breast cancer, but I'm also very aware that we've got to do more for men in terms of getting them to make sure that they go and have their checks. A lot of guys don't, I'm tough, I don't need to go to the doctor.
It's the uncomfortable conversation. They don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
that.
And look, I have a check and I have it the old way. I don't have the blood test, boom, and the rubber glove. And look, it's uncomfortable for a minute, and you're fine. And you're better off to your family being alive than dying or suffering from prostate cancer.
So you talk about your second episode.
Yep.
What brought that on? As I said, you
Same thing.
You didn't learn your lessons from the first time.
No, I didn't learn the lesson. Same thing.
How did you get through and how did you learn your lessons from that second episode?
Well, I learned to say no. That was the first thing, was being able to, people come to you and because you can do it, you know, or they know you can do it, they'll lean on you and they'll shift the pressure onto you. But in the end, I had to say no. And I say, look, no, I can't do it. I've got these commitments to my family. And while I was there for the kids when they were in school, I wasn't there all the time. And they would go to bed and I'd still be working 4 hours after they go to bed. They wouldn't know. They gone off, Dad's out working, but he'll be home soon. But they'd wake up in the morning and I'd be there. And then I'd drop them at school and I made sure I had that contact. I'd go to their sport. And make sure that I was there to support them in their sport, because that was important to me, because my parents didn't have the wherewithal to come and support me when I played sport. Even at the highest levels of basketball and golf and all the sports I played, baseball and so on, they weren't there. And I feel that's important for that connection within family, is to be that. But trying to balance it all is the difficult part, but you can do it. Yeah. You can do it. It's just you've got to be careful.
So all your experience in the life you put together with the highs, the lows, the joy and the sadness, if you could talk to someone coming through or who's on a similar path to you, in that, you know, they're young, they've got a couple of kids,
yeah,
he or she has the big job, but you don't want them to forget about everyone at home. How would you give them some advice to?
Well, the important thing is that, let me put it this way. You're number one. That's what you've got to remember. As anybody, you are the most important person, but you've got to then put in place who's next important to you. And while your parents have done a terrific job in raising you and hopefully giving you all the right messages in terms of respect and, manners and the whole thing, you remain number one. You've got to prioritise yourself, but you've got to, if you've got a partner or a wife and you've got kids and so forth, well, they're your next priority, not your parents. Your parents are still there. But the most important people in your life will be your partner or wife, and if you're that way, and kids. And it's important that what you've been given, that you pass on to your children. Now, hopefully you've been raised properly. We locked our way a little bit with some of the respect and manners and that through different generations, because when I grew up, well, you called everybody Mr. and Mrs. and there were certain protocols that you followed in that regard, and it was more about respect. And I think respect covers everything. So to young people, if you've got to have respect. You've got to listen to what your partner is saying. You've got to listen to your kids about what they want from you. And you've got to balance all that. And it's pretty hard sometimes. But the main thing is if you have that respect and listen, and that's probably the biggest thing, because a lot of people, there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of listening. But most definitely listen and make sure that you're passing on the good values to your children. And then your job's important, but it's not, look, if you got sacked today, or if you left that job today, they'd have somebody in there straight away.
Absolutely.
You know, you're expendable. You might place more importance on your job than your family. Don't do that.
Yep.
Don't do that. You know, your family is more important, and you've got to provide for them, and always look to improve yourself.
So this podcast is called The Hard Way. Because, look, to be brutal, you're a bit the same. We've all learned a lot of things the hard way. If you have to sum up your journey in one sentence, what would be your hard way sentence?
My hard way message is very simple. I have it here on my arm, and it's been my, if you like, credo for a long, long time. And no matter what you do in your life, whether it's work, whether it's a relationship, whether it's just your sport, just your basic fitness or looking after yourself, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I repeat that to myself every time when things get tough. If it's to be, it's up to me. It's all back. You got the onus. You're number one. You got to do it. And that makes me do it. Let me tell you.
That's magnificent. I got goosebumps. That's fantastic.
It's a reminder. And a mate of mine in business, Billy Bunter, he's a terrific fella, give you the shirt off his back. And he always used to say, Root, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I said, yeah, mate, that's the message.
So we're now on to one of the final parts, the book of questions. Jody,
I'm interested to see what Jode wrote, because she's a friend of mine, and I've watched her advance from different jobs and that sort of thing. She's a real goer. So
open the book, read the question. You got to read out the question, and then you got to give us an answer.
What is your why? What motivates you to get up every morning? What is my why? I believe we're blessed to have a life, and we've got to place importance on that. And I believe that I want to be the best that I can be, and I want to continue along that way. I'd like to live a long life, but if I become that it becomes all too much, and I maybe dementia or whatever, I certainly believe in euthanasia. I don't like to see anybody suffer. You wouldn't let your dog suffer the way that some people suffer. So my why is to live life, and live life every day.
Yep.
Live your life every day. And people say to me, well, we're living, but I mean, do something in a day, in that particular day, that enhances and embraces your life. And whether it's being nice to someone, it costs nothing to be nice in that regard. What motivates you to get up every morning? Well, I'm the hardest person to get out of bed in that regard, and I guess it's got to be to do with sport, because I get up, what motivates me to get up is to go to my aqua aerobics class with my 18 fellow ladies, all of them, and myself, the only male in the class, and do aqua aerobics 3 times a week, and to do my exercise, and then I'm fresh and ready to take on the day.
Limber and supple.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I mean, 73 going on 74, and I want to stay a bit longer. And I guess really the thing that makes me want to get up every morning and live life is my granddaughters, my grandkids. I'm so blessed to have, the best thing that can ever happen to you is to have grandchildren. And I'm so blessed to have healthy grandchildren. The Anchor's had 2. Kira's yet to deliver. He's got surfboards. I don't know if we'll just end up with surfboards. But hopefully there'll be more to come along. And I just love grandkids and having kids around and marvel at them, from tiny babies to the 2.5-year-olds that don't call me Grumpsy, they call me Peter. My granddaughter Ruby, Peter, you've got to listen to Mama because she knows best. And of course, Mama is Kathy.
That's what in the way of 37.
That's what motivates me. My grandchildren, to be with my grandchildren.
Do you have the question in your head? Tell us. You got to write it down.
I've got to. So I can't tell you.
No, because I can't read it. It's for our next guest.
Okay.
Well, that brings us to the end.
That's lovely. It's been great to have a chat.
It's been absolutely fantastic.
I think we've covered a fair few subjects.
I think we've gone up, down, around, and up again. Mate, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Pleasure.
This, as I said, second ever guest, we've gone all right. Now, everyone, if you want to tune in, you can find us on YouTube, which you can subscribe and hopefully share. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, and you can also find us on the Spotify podcast app. Thank you very much for watching. This has been The Hard Way.